Okay. So I recognized Qumran, that she was speaking about Qumran, and as she told the story, and I asked her, "Is this what you're saying?" Because I heard it as Qumran, and I don't know if that was me, just my Clara audience. Sometimes things are distorted, or what, or if that's really how she said it. I don't know. Some expert in Aramaic can tell me how it's properly pronounced, but.
Yes.
And I knew the Dead Sea Scrolls, so I knew I had been like very fascinated when I found them. And, of course, like all of us, drawn right to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, like all those ancient scriptures that were being found. And that, I think, for all of us just resonated because they spoke of teachings that weren't always presented through the churches and temples as they are now. So I knew that, but I didn't know much else. So when I channeled this information, I hadn't read Dolores Cannon. She did the past life regression with some people who had lifetimes in Qumran as an Essene. I hadn't read was it Joanna Prentice? There's a couple of past lifetime, and then I think some channel books that talked about it, but I hadn't read them yet. So I just wanted to say, so I'm presenting what I heard, what she told me as a story, with no, I know that all of you have probably read things and maybe have had memories, and I'd love to hear memories or experiences or knowings, and love for you to contribute that to this conversation. Not so much about, I know what other people have said about Qumran, and I'll present some of like the research. But this is the Magdalene story as she's told it through me. And this is what she wants me to present to you. So I broke it down, and I said, we're talking about chapter 2. But she mentions Qumran through chapter 3 and chapter 4. I mean, throughout really the book. But so I did include some information from there just so we can bring together the information that she's telling us about Qumran. And then I'm going to wait to the end to present to you her message, because I think it's better presented that way. So let me just take a minute to just welcome her, Mary Magdalene, in, and to ask for her light and her guidance, for her to speak to each of our hearts and to help us in remembering our connection, our lifetimes with her, and this ancient lineage that we're going to be talking about. So I've done a little research for you, just so for those of you who are coming in without any knowledge of what Qumran is. Prior to 1946, in what is now Israel, what they believed was more of a fortress. And you can find pictures of it. I put it on some of my posts of this, the remnants of some sort of structure where people lived, and it could look like a fortress. Not much was thought about it. It's about 1.5 kilometers west of the Dead Sea. And it was known to have been destroyed in 68 AD. But in 1946, a couple of boys were playing. There's caves all over, and that's the post that most people saw, these caves above this area of Qumran. And one of the boys threw a rock. It hit something. He went up to explore what it hit, what it broke, and there were all these jars full of scriptures and papyrus, and brought family back, brought people back, and what was discovered over the next 10 years or so were all these ancient manuscripts from written in Aramaic and Hebrew, and some of them were from the Old Testament, ancient scriptures. Some of them were not part of the Hebrew Bible, not known. And as they were being discovered, one of them was the Book of Enoch, and most significantly, the Book of Enoch. And so these historians, these researchers, these archaeologists began to recognize that maybe this place was not what they thought it was. And they had writings from a Roman writer, Pliny, a Hebrew historian, Josephus, and Philo, I think also a Jewish philosopher. And they lived during the time when Qumran would have been, people lived there, and they were contemporaries of that time period. And then Joseph was towards the latter end of it. But they had written about this group called the Essenes, and they said that they lived close to the Dead Sea. They actually gave the location, and they described who the Essenes were and all of that, but nobody really knew what they were talking about or where these people, they disappeared. They didn't know where they lived. But when this discovery of these manuscripts was found in the Qumran caves, they started putting together that possibly this was Qumran. This is what Josephus and these philosophers were writing about, this description of this community. So in a nutshell, that's what Qumran was. So they believe now, like if you ask an archaeologist scholar, they will say Qumran was a monastery where only men lived. And it was the ancient Essenes, and they were based on these writings that these philosophers wrote about, they were very strict. They were very, they didn't marry. They were very isolated. And, that's the essence of who they believe the Essenes were. The Magdalene has presented a different picture to me, and I notice others who have been channels and others who have memories of Qumran and living. And she never uses the term Essene to me in the writings, or she's never actually said the word Essene to me, but she speaks of Qumran and this place that she has great affection for, that she lived and she studied in. So, okay, so now I'm gonna get into what she told me, what she shared with me, and now I want you to ask questions and bring in your own insight and your own memories if you have them, or just knowings or feelings about Qumran, because my guidance is that all of us had a connection to Qumran.
Okay.
That all of us, if you could if there's other stuff going on in your house, just mute yourself so it's not distracting for everyone. But this is what and I will read you her message later, but she saying to me, you all have connections, whether you live there or you visited there, or that you are part of this bloodline of the Essenes, that you're connected to them. So this is all as I share. And you can say it's a teaching, but really it's a stirring up of your memories of who you are. That's what she said to me this morning. So from chapter 2, the Magdalene, I don't know if you're looking at your book or not, but page 13, she gives us her first description of, as a little girl at 3 years old, her father, Benjamin, who she always described him as having a priestly nature. He was a leader of the community in Bethel. He was a man with great wealth, great properties, from Syria, maybe from Sirius too, the planet. Leader of that community in Bethel, and was guided, she says, by the Most High to bring those who felt called to Qumran. And then she goes on to describe this process. And she spent many days repeatedly telling me, and I was trying to understand what she was saying, because I didn't think I was getting it right. But in the end, I realized I was. She kept saying, we went and we traveled, and we would leave early in the morning because of the sun. And we would rest in the afternoon when the sun was high, and she would talk about these three-sided structures, these tents that they would stay in, and many days and many nights, and we would prepare. And then she would go on, and I was like, well, how long? And I would look at the map, like, how long did it take you to get to Qumran? Like, and then I finally realized she was saying, like, they didn't go there right away. They had to be prepared before they could even enter into Qumran or be part of Qumran in any way. And so now I understand it. And as I reread the chapters, I understand it. She described many of her family members. Her father had many brothers, and she had cousins and aunts and uncles who all traveled. And her father was guided to go there to help to prepare for the coming of the righteous one. So, of course, those are the teachings of the Jewish tradition. But the knowledge that her father and the people who were becoming part of the community of Essenes was that they were going to be holding space. She actually said the word holding space, anchoring in the great teachings, that they were part of this lineage that was going to help this righteous one to bring forth this lineage, bring forth this these great teachings. She, on page 14, she says, for those who sought a new life and those who sought the inner light. So it went beyond, you know, what the Torah was teaching, and with the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees, they were very traditional teachings of the Old Testament. The Essenes, or she never says the Essenes, but this group knew of deeper teachings, very much in alignment with what all of us know to be the teachings now of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. So my understanding, and then when I have read, and actually some of the archaeological research talks about, they've found grave sites in Qumran, and in the immediate area, it's all men. But in the surrounding areas, they find women and children. And they don't really find houses, so per se, but they speculate that they lived in tents and such. And so that was very validating to me, that this is what happened. And that they had to prepare. And she talks about their cleansing process and their rituals in preparation for this work, to be part of the community of Qumran. And it's very high calling to help to support the coming of the righteous one. So and she talks about the need to travel for food, that it was difficult to find water. You know, you can imagine like the Dead Sea, being near the Dead Sea, but it's all salt. So but that she was happy. She was together with her family, and she gets into how adventuresome she was and how much trouble she got in all the time, which I just love. It's so funny. Like, she's just so real to us, you know, just repeatedly she tells us through the different chapters how much she would wander, and she liked to laugh. And, you know, I guess everybody just had to watch out for her and make sure she wasn't getting into trouble. So I don't know, does anybody have any like things to contribute to that?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Barb.
According to what I'm hearing now, and I just read it and didn't pick this up, but this makes the Magdalene several years older than Yeshua. If she's going to help prepare for his birth with the community.
Well, yeah, so she was 3. I don't know that that he necessarily wasn't born yet. I think they just knew that they were part of the preparation for his work, the work to come. I don't know that she necessarily means that he wasn't born yet, because then she talks about it in that very opening introduction, that she is a little older. She said he was born but by months, not years. She talks about her birth, and then she says several months later. So I feel like they were contemporaries, but yeah, she doesn't go into, it's a good point. She doesn't go into a lot of detail about that, but other than, I mean, and I don't know if anyone here is Jewish, but I know they're awaiting the Christ, the righteous one. It's been centuries, thousands of years that they're waiting. But this description of what her father taught her and the family was like, they knew it was imminent. They knew he was coming, or, so maybe those in Qumran knew who he was. She didn't really get into all of that with me. But if he was just little too. So, it's interesting. She never talks about Mother Mary in this story, or, other than like a quick reference to her. It's definitely Mary Magdalene's story and her journey. So, yeah, that's a good point, Barb. So, okay. Anybody else? Anything they want to?
Mary, I'd like to share.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, so about 4 years ago, I guess it was, I went to a sand bath, and I was reading a book, and lying in the sand bath, there was only a few people there, 5 or 6. Anyway, I had a vision where
You said,
we were
yeah.
in,
you said you're leaving.
I mean, from what
you-
you've just, sorry, there's someone needs to
Yeah,
mute
can
that.
someone you just mute yourself if there's a conversation in the background? It's very distracting.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was we were all the women, including Mary Magdalene, we were all next to a river, and there were these huge white stones, and yeah, it was really beautiful, because I had this sense that we were washing our bodies, but also washing clothes. And what you've just said has just reminded me, when you were saying about the preparations, it felt like exactly that there were these ritualistic preparations going, but it was very much, okay, all the women were together, we were really peaceful, it was really calm, we were quiet, and it was just, yeah, phenomenal experience, because there was this incredible love between the women, and it was yeah, just a beautiful sense of community, and that there was this lovely feeling of excitement, but at the same time everyone was really quiet, and just getting on beautifully. And yeah, that's just reminded me, it was very, very, very powerful and beautiful.
Oh, so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love that. That's like stirs something in me for sure. Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research on the Essenes, and because I was in a group called Celebrating Life Ministries, and I was a student, and so there were lists of books that we needed to read. And so I read a couple of books on the Essenes, a couple of books that Dolores Cannon also channeled. And I also had some readings from this wonderful mystic intuitive.
I saw that you got some ventilation come and go, because
You know what? I'm gonna just mute. I'm gonna maybe mute everyone except for Andrea. Let me just see. Okay, and then I'm gonna unmute you, Andrea. What? Ugh. No, I can't unmute you.
I just
Go ahead. Are you okay? Good. Okay.
Anyway, so this intuitive mystic, Reverend Carey, at one point when I was reading so much about the Essenes, I asked him, you know, I asked for a reading, and he said that I was an Essene in 2 different lifetimes.
Mm.
And then I really like looked into the Essenes, and I realized that, and you know, they're still around.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a group, they're still around. They were such a beautiful group of people, into herbs and walking on, like gliding on the earth,
Mm.
always dressed in white. And I also did listen to a video where it was where Jesus was walking on the earth, and I just like quantumly, I just like went there, and I felt like I was walking with them. So and I'm Jewish, which I don't think it matters because it's just this lifetime.
Right.
But I feel a really strong connection to these scenes. I also read Anna, the grandmother of Jesus,
Mhm.
and that's an incredible book about the Essenes and how she learned how to freeze her body, so she could live 600, 700 years.
Mhm.
And I always think of the Essenes as, when I look at the word Essene, I think essence. And it
Mhm.
really makes me think that they were just the essence of purity, the essence of love, the essence of all that we're all seeking, or are already. Well, we are, aren't we?
Right.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
for letting me share.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, Jennifer saying, yeah. When I first, the Essenes are active still. I attend services studying. Oh, yeah. Because when the Nazarene Essene Church, when I, first, I guess it was when the Magdalene asked me to name the website Blue Rose, and I would Google Blue Rose. I would get some of those Essene groups. I think it was Jennifer. I think it was the Nazarene. And they talk about the Magdalene and Yeshua and all of that. And yes, so they're beautiful. So when I said it was, that monastery was destroyed, but I should have said, that they, yes. What did you write? Yes, the 49. Oh, the 49 petals of the blue rose. Oh, you're gonna have to tell me more about that, Jennifer. Maybe not here, but I'm very curious about that. So yeah, so I mean, and they're still here and we're still here. We wouldn't be drawn to all of this if we weren't part of it. And they were around. I mean, Andrea, I'm trying to remember, but the Essene community was BC, I don't know, like a few hundred years, right? The community was established, and then before they, the Romans came in and destroyed their
Yeah.
site. But
I mean, I think they weren't looked upon in the Jewish community as, they were looked upon as in question, like, who are these people? They're not Sanhedrins, they're not the other group. And they just kept to themselves. They learned so much about energy and herbal remedies and all kinds of stuff that I feel like we're all into now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. They, well, that kind of leads me into the next part of what the Magdalene shared with me. I mean, and she talked about her mother with the herbs, her mother and grandmother as healers. And then she talked about, in these chapters, she talked about the rituals. And she still says them to me. And I think if you've done like private sessions with me or somebody else who does this work, they talk about getting up early, rising with the sun. In a later portion of the book, she talks about how her ritual was to rise with the sun and to go outside and to, I think she would say, sit beneath a tree or hug a tree, and as opposed to Martha, her sister Martha, whose ritual was more sitting with the Torah in the morning and reading and prayers, Mary Magdalene would talk about going outside in nature. But and the things that I've read talk about these scenes that was very much a part, but it was individual. They would go out and rise with the sun and have their own ritual. It wasn't always, it was unique to each of them, their choices. But and then also the walking. And she tells me all the time, walk in nature, get outside. It's about, I don't know, 40 degrees now in the morning here. And she keeps saying, take your shoes off and go for a walk on the beach and connect with the rhythms of the earth. But she talks about as a child walking with her father and walking with her family, and that's when she wanders off, right? And the ritual of walking, as the dinner was prepared, they would all go for a walk, and then they would come back, and so this is when they were living in the tents. They would have campfires, and the children were silent. They knew that this was their time, their parents' time to talk and discuss, and they knew to be quiet, and then they were sent off to bed. And then she talked about the rituals of chanting, devotional prayer and chanting in Aramaic, beginning and the end of the day. So all of those were part of their practice, as she told me. But I love not so much a ritual, but when she talks about the gardening, because the gardening, she talks about the heart lines of the earth, the grid lines, and she talks about using the crystals to help the plants. Then she gets into the secret knowledge that they had at Qumran and all of that, and that they knew. And she said, we knew to garden far away from the fault lines. And I remember when I wrote that, I was like, what is she talking? I mean, I know what she's talking about, a fault line, like an earthquake, but I didn't know why she was telling me that. But then just when I was researching for this, I found, oh yeah, there was an earthquake that destroyed part of the area of Qumran, the structure. So there were earthquakes in those areas, but she was saying they intuitively knew, or they could feel, the ley lines, and they knew where to garden. So when she got into all of that, I just loved. And then she talks about the crystals that they knew were kept at Qumran. And her father had pieces of the crystals, and he would show the children and talk about the rose quartz or the malachite or the lapis. So anybody want to talk about anything about that and how that resonated with them, or memories that it stirred?
I read that that when after Jesus was crucified, that they did indeed write the Dead Sea Scrolls. But the other, in order to preserve the information, because they knew that the Romans wouldn't understand it, they were hoping that other people would eventually access it. But I also heard that they would embed information in crystals. So if you see crystals with like the top of a triangle, you know that there's information in there. I've never been able to access that information, but I heard it sounded like truth to me when I heard it. The other thing that I read was that each child, when they were born, would have an astrology chart, so they could find out what their strengths were, so they could figure out what they should do in the community that would completely be in alignment with who they were. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, and she talks about that too with her, I guess it was her cousin, but he was much older, but how he knew about the study of the stars and would talk to her about astrology. She didn't say astrology, but numerous times she talks about that it was just common knowledge that they studied the stars and the equinox and yeah, well, Jennifer, I love this. I believe this too. Yeah, you can unmute yourselves. It was just distracting. There's some background noise. You guys, I think you can just unmute yourself. I was just looking. I want people to talk. It just was, let's see. Jennifer, did you want to say more or just comment?
Well, in 2019, when I went to Glastonbury, everything you just said about the crystals and everything is some of the teachings that I learned, because it was the pilgrimage of Yeshua. So we walked his pilgrimage. I'm sure didn't see all the details of your recent journey, but
Mhm.
I think we went to some of the same places, and there's such truth behind a lot of places where he was, what you said. And like, did you, Mary, visit the thorn tree?
I have visited the thorn tree. I don't think our group went there, but I know we didn't.
But that
Yeah.
story in itself is just like
Mhm.
amazing, and I feel like that totally aligns, even though it's about a staff, it still aligns with the
Mhm.
crystals. But my puppies are loud. That's why I was not unmuting myself.
Oh, okay. They have something to say.
Right. So I just love this. I just want to
Yeah.
say that. And I totally resonate with most of everything that anybody's saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Like personal experience, even in this lifetime. I'm like, yep, yep.
I know. It's yeah. I just love what you were saying, Andrea, about the information. And I think we're probably she gets into that more and later in the book, that the information has been stored. And actually part of the channeling that she gave me this morning, that why Qumran was chosen, that area, because of the vortex, the energies that are there, and what was stored there within the grid systems. And, part of, not to go too far off topic, but the work, the Order of the Blue Rose that the Magdalene has asked me to do with the activations, there's like the 3 levels. It's open to anyone here. It's open to all of us. We're all Blue Rose, but it's the teachings, the work for many of us because we carry the key codes that unlock the information in these certain areas where we're being called to go. So that's why it's very specific when I put out something out and say, it's been in New Jersey and Virginia in the United States that we go. So far, I don't know, Amber Marie, maybe I'll start doing them in Europe, but we're asked to clear and then to anchor in grid systems. And then when we go to the second level is all about going to the mountains and to sing these codes out, the codes that we carry into the grid systems of the earth, into the heart lines. And then the third level is going to Glastonbury and going to France and receiving the codes that we ourselves were part of leaving behind, the information that was the secret knowledge that this is the time that's waking up. And so then, in that chapter, and actually I can tie it back in, because she talks about the information at Qumran that she studied. I mean, I think it's known. They studied, the philosopher. They studied Pythagoras. They studied the Book of Enoch, which, like Andrea, I don't know who said this, they were kind of, the Essenes, the Qumran were kind of looked at as a little different, not so very much like now for us, right? We're still considered a little different. Maybe they're not going to come and conquer us or or hang us anymore, but they carried this knowledge, and they had the libraries there. They had libraries at Alexandria, but where was all this information coming from? And she talks about the vessels of light, the ancient ones, these beings who would come, and she would say they come during the night because they weren't known to even many of the people in Qumran. It was very secretive, but they carried the ancient knowledge. And in some of the other books, she's never used the word Kalu to me, but I know in some of the other books, channels have used the word Kalu. They were the Kalu. They were known as the Kalu. But she did say they came from the West, and I know they came from from the fall of Atlantis. These ancient wisdom teachers or carriers of vessels of knowledge continue to travel throughout the earth to place in certain communities that could keep the information, the knowledge safe and secret only for those who with a pure heart, who could hold that knowledge. It was shared with. So even within Qumran, within the Essene community, there were those who had the secret knowledge. And so the Magdalene's father, Benjamin, and her mother knew who she was. They knew of her destiny, and they knew that she needed this information. She needed to be taught, and they were prepared to be her parents and share knowledge with her. So, and I love that she talks about Pythagoras, and she talks about how she wasn't great with math. I'm just like, she's so human too, right? Because I'm just like, oh God, geometry and Pythagorean theorem and all that stuff. And I'm just laughing, thinking I guess she thought the same thing, but the philosophy, the deeper knowing, was why she was receiving those teachings. So did anybody else have any memories or stories or things that resonated in those chapters? Chapter 2, but it's actually 3 and 4 because I added in some information from those.
Mary, what struck me was it's like so similar to our own journey of cleansing and doing rituals in order to receive Christ consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that the very last phrase that or sentence that she put in at the end of chapter 2, she says, can't remember the exact, but she says, we arrived at Qumran after many months and whatever she says, we preparing on the 3rd day of the 3rd month, a number significant to our journey or to the journey, or however she says it. And of course, 3, the master number of Christ consciousness. They knew that they were, I wonder, like, her father knew the Magdalene was only 3 years old. How many really were just following Benjamin, or how many understood completely? But they were awaiting the righteous one, the Christ, and as a consciousness. So they carried that knowledge, and they carried it as knowing that they are of that lineage. I feel like now is a good time to actually read the message that she gave me for you. I mean, some of it was she gave to me for me, because I was last night going, okay, what are we going to talk about? Okay, wait, what do you want me to say? Or and she was like, calm down, Mary, all is well. She says, the land of Qumran is upon you. It is here that I dwelled to aid in the remembering of the Christ consciousness, to draw forth the changes that were required as the memory center was stirred in my brethren in the light. And then she says, I would give you reassurance that there were many. She was talking about the monks. I was questioning her on who lived there, the monks, and she was saying there were many. I would give you reassurance that many dwelled in this place, in the surrounding area. We sought this place to aid us in our remembering of past incarnations and the places that we dwelled. In eons of time, we have sought this place of Qumran, as it contained within it much energetic passageways and places where the masters dwelled. They have lived long and masterful lives here and left behind much knowledge. So again, to Andrea's point, there was much that was left there to be shared. It was embedded here within the cave structures and stuff to be received by the lineages that entered, so that they too may enter the lands of mastery. And I don't think she's just talking about the manuscripts that were hidden in the caves, which I'm sure they were placed there and hidden there. But the actual energetic structures that held the information. Yeshua was one who sought this place to aid in the remembering of incarnated states and to step forward as a teacher of wisdom, of the esoteric path, of the mind of God. He held this state and drew from each of us a higher consciousness elevated in nature, And so the light body entered, and the consciousness of the Christed One was drawn forth. We awaited this state, so that the lineage of light may once again be planted upon the earth, and so that the masses may find their new state of light, their new state of being through this ancient bloodline. The masses gathered here to receive from the Master Yeshua this new bloodline of light, and through him a new level of understanding and expansion entered the earth. Mother Mary, as you know her, received her initiatic rites in this place to prepare her for his entrance, for the Christed bloodline of old. She would carry him to be received as a new Christed form, one of the lineage of the Melchizedek one, who stood in the righteous form of light and would implant upon the earth a new way. I stood here too in this place to receive the new lineage, to hold the hand of Yeshua and prepare for the journey to come. There were many who resided here in preparation for the work to the righteous one, for the righteous one, who would preside over and gain residency in the hearts of mankind, so that they may no longer be held spellbound in a state of unknowing. We sought to break the bonds of the unknown state, placed here by the dark ones, who caused many to tremble in fear. We sought to unite the factions of the divided heart and bring a new justice to mankind of unification, of love, and of joy. The masses gathered in this place twice a year to receive the teachings of Yeshua, and it was here these teachings still remain, embedded within the rock formations and the caves of Qumran. Bask now in the glory of knowing that all is well, and that the return is upon you. The work is completed here in this time and space, through the energetic bloodline of those who are gathered here. They unite the factions of the earth through their presence, here and now. They are of the lineage of the Melchizedek one, of the ancient bloodlines of the Christed form. They hold the true light that will be blasted forth from the mountaintops to their brethren. And so united, they will dwell as one once again. Allow now the land of Qumran to enter you as you remember this place. Remember and unite them. Okay. Yeah, and then she gives me a message for myself. But she wants me to repeat, you are of the bloodline of the ancients and carry within your vein structures the blood of the blue rose, the star child, the lineage of Melchizedek. Yeah, and then she talks about the star system Sirius and Andromeda, the blue star, the places that we have come from, the land of the blue rose. So in this chapter, she doesn't talk about it, but it comes in other channelings through that Melchizedek, who had no mother, no father, came from the stars to implant upon the earth this Christed lineage through each of us to help the earth to rise in consciousness from the fall. And the Essenes, as the Magdalene shares with me and many others in this land of Qumran, knew their purpose and knew that they held this space. And then they also traveled, many of them traveled. And those entities of light that brought the knowledge, they traveled to other places. They traveled to the Druids, the Buddhists hold this knowledge. There are many of the ancient groups, ancient esoteric teachings that carry this knowledge in other lands, and are connected to the Essenes, which is why we have all these places that we're called to from these different lifetimes. They all carry the knowledge, shared in maybe different language, but it's all the same source. And that's what she wanted me to share with you, that you are as fascinating as this is to listen to about Qumran and to study groups. She just wants me to remind you that you carry all of this knowledge within you, within your hearts, that you are of this lineage. You lived these incarnations and did the work then, if you want to think of time as linear, and now. And as she's saying, it's completed now through each of us in this time period right now, in the now. And And that's why you're here. That's why, you know, it's fascinating to have all the information, right? But it's about what's being remembered in your hearts right now, activated for each of our roles. We're each called to a role now to hold space, to hold that lineage. Does anybody have anything they want to share? I know I saw a couple of people say the information. Yeah, I just got full body chills. Yeah. Yeah. That's why you're here. It's activating you.
I'm wondering if, I mean, I kind of feel this. When I went to Egypt, I felt like Isis was also an entity that I'm working with, and it seems like she's connected to the whole blue
Mhm.
light.
Oh, absolutely. It's all Isis. I think next month is Isis. It's all about Isis. Yeah. She's very much the veil of Isis, all of it. She's part of this work for sure. As a daughter, you know, we're all daughters. I would be shocked if all of us were not part of the priestesses of Isis and connected to Egypt in
Mary,
one
I just
lifetime or
wanted
another.
to share. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Who's that? Go
Oh,
ahead.
this Tracy.
Oh, Tracy,
Um,
there you are. Okay.
I just wanted to share. It was amazing because I was in Joshua Tree National Park back in the summertime, and my husband went off to go hiking, and I just sat in this canyon, just kind of absorbing the beauty of the place. And all of a sudden, I heard the words "daughter of Yeshua," and I was just like, "Oh my goodness!" And you know, it was like I have channeling abilities. You know, it's not readily available. They send me messages when I need to know them. But
Mhm.
I was just kind of sitting there, and wow, it was such an amazing experience. And now making the connection between, right, Yeshua's daughter, the Christ carries the Christ consciousness. It's
Mhm.
just amazing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh, Joshua Tree. My son was just there. That's beautiful, Tracy. I love that. I just love, and I know, you know, I'm just sharing what I've heard or the information. I know all of us are getting information and messages and to be shared. And like these forums are great for each of us to know that we're, you know, just to support each other and to know that we're all on this path and we all know are waking up to who we are, to our work and to what we carry. It's so important that we have that connection with each other too, as much as we have to do it on an individual basis to know that we're all loved and supported. And then we have these communities. Anybody else have anything they wanted to ask about or, oh, humbling. Yeah. And it is, it's humbling and it's humbling. I don't know what the words are that I'm trying to find. And at the same time, just a recognition of your own worthiness, of your own power too. You know, it's all of it, that connection. And that we're surrounded by Magdalenes at this moment, by the Essenes who are just here, like, you know, can feel them, like just saying, yes, yes, yes. Thank you for doing this work.
So
Most
it's
of all,
also,
go ahead, Monica.
so what I'm getting, I mean, what I'm trying to understand, so it's really, this is the time where, as you said before, we all have to step in our roles, but also this is the time to believe that yeah, of a time of completion, right? Where
That's a beautiful way to say it. Yeah, that this is the cycle that we,
yeah,
if we look at it in a linear way, that what began in Qumran and prior to that, the Order of Melchizedek and all that preparation, we had faith and we knew that this incarnation would be what completes it. We knew that was not the time, but this is the time when it completes. Yeah. And
Wow.
that we each step into our roles, like I mean, especially with that Lionsgate and opening in August, and this whole push forward, all of us are being pushed into new roles and to really stepping forward in who we are. Was that Amba I just saw? Well, Jesus. Can you talk about? Oh, yeah, talk about my trip to France. I'd love to talk about that. My feeling or my belief is, Mary Magdalene, Yeshua, that they walk through each of us. Daily she'll say to me, I enter you, that there's not one person, and they're ascended, they're so expansive, that to be limited to a one human form, that's my belief. That she's never told me, oh, I'm coming again and I'm going to come as this in this human form. The new form is the Christed is the consciousness, the ergomos, the masculine and the feminine, and it's waking up through each of us. Yeah, I feel like we're going on an hour or a little over an hour, so I don't want to make this too long. But so the trip, I mentioned a little bit about the trip to France and Glastonbury. So the women that came, and there are men who have done the trainings, but there was 12 women who came. Most of them have started the training in 2017 or 18, and are healers and prophets, and do so many work in their own right. They have their own roles, as well as being part of the Order of the Blue Rose and doing the earth work. And so they were called to come to Glastonbury. So we began the journey in the Magdalene guided me to bring, and I don't know if it'll always be this way, but to go to France and to go to the south of France to certain sacred sites where she has been, where there were codes left. There was work done as well. She asked us to do some clearing, some dark energies that were in certain areas connected to Nazi energies and others more ancient, and so we were put to work in France, but also received a lot in certain. We went to the Fountain d'Amour. We baptized, jumped into the waters there. It was freezing cold, but we did it. We went to the seat of Isis in Rennes-les-Bains, and we found the caves of Mary Magdalene by Rennes Chateau, which was very powerful. A lot of synchronistic. Some of the things we planned didn't happen, and some things just synchronistically. A guide just appeared for us when we stayed in Leconte, with I don't know if any of you know Anaya Sophia. She has a place in Montségur, and there was a woman there who took us, who knew where these caves were. It was very powerful initiation in the caves. And then we traveled to Glastonbury, where the Magdalene Yeshua shared with me that's where the great gatherings were, in Glastonbury in Avalon, to receive the final initiation for those 12 women. And we went to Avebury, went to some other places too. We went to the Chalice Well during the day, but the Glastonbury tour is where the initiation took place. So it was very powerful, and just, it's hard to put into words. We were talking about in the future doing like a forum where all of us can, the women who went, for those of you who feel called to be part of the work, that you are part of the work, but feel called to be part of it, doing like a forum so we could talk about it and we could share our experiences and you guys can ask questions. So I'm going to look at a date to do that. Maybe time it with when I start the new series for the level 1. which will probably be in the next fall. So, but yeah, it just was so hard to put into words. The next one will also include Iona. We're going to Isle of Iona. They call that Avalon as well when they speak to me.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
just mystical.
I'd love to
just-
come next year.
I
Mary.
know, I know. I'm curious of see, maybe she'll send me over to England or to Ireland, Marie, or somewhere to do the level 1. Not always the United States, but anyway, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But thank you all for being part of the conversation and sharing your stories and your wisdom.
Thank you, Mary.
Oh, you're welcome. And as I said, next month will be Isis, the Daughters of Isis. She travels on now to Egypt. So we'll start talking who brought, oh, Andrea brought, yes, the connection with Isis. So I will send out a link, and I'll look into why some of you didn't get the links and the recordings, but I'll make sure you get this one today. And I'll post it on the Lineage of the Blue Rose as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much.
Oh,
This
you're
is
all
great.
welcome.
Thank
So
you.
nice to talk to you.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mary.